Good afternoon and welcome to the third part in our series of Topics at 12 in partnership with NC 100. And we are just very thankful to be continuing such a timely topic today, talking about student debt relief and responsible lending and all the things. So thank you for joining us with the Reidsville Chamber of Commerce, and I am going to turn it over to one of our partners, Demarcus Andrews.
All right, so welcome everyone. I appreciate everyone joining for our third part of our series here in Rockingham County in partnership with the Reidsville Chamber of Commerce and NC 100. My name is Demarcus Andrews. I am the Director of Outreach and Engagement and the North Carolina Policy Manager here at the Center for Responsible Lending. And for the newer folks in the room that are not familiar with our work, CRL works on credit and debt issues that impact vulnerable and communities of color. And we work to create a financial marketplace that works for everyone, regardless of where you fall on the financial spectrum. And the underpinnings of this work is literally just to build and protect wealth for marginalized communities. So part of my responsibility here at the Center for Responsible Lending is heading up a statewide coalition. Our coalition uses a variety of advocacy tools to achieve high-impact reform that protects and builds wealth for marginalized community. And through the coalition's work is actually where I met Merrill Holloway in NC 100, and we partnered on this event series. And what we wanted to do is basically have an open conversation with community here in Rockingham County about what financial issues were impacting residents here. And from that conversation, our event series was born. So today's topic will be about student debt and what North Carolina, or what the Center for Responsible Lending is doing in North Carolina to protect borrowers from student loan servicer problems. And the second part of our presentation today will be on college readiness. And so with that, I will introduce one of our speakers for today. And as a side note, I'll also be presenting today, so I won't reintroduce myself. But I'd like to introduce you to Elizabeth Wood. She is a second-year college advisor with the Carolina College Advisor Corps. She currently serves at Reidsville High School in Rockingham County, North Carolina. Shortly after completing her studies at UNC Chapel Hill in 2020 with a BA in Political Science and Sociology, Elizabeth joined the Corps to give back to her North Carolina community, serve as a near-peer advocate, and assist students with reaching their post-secondary goals. So with that, I'll jump into our presentation for today. So welcome. I appreciate you all joining to learn more about student loan servicers and their role in exacerbating debts debt loads of borrowers here in North Carolina. And so I know this looks like a lot, but we'll get through it pretty quickly. But I want to give you an overview of what it looks like on the national kind of landscape as it relates to student debt. Then I want to zero in a bit in North Carolina and what this looks like state specifically. And then we'll get into a bit of demographic information about what communities have been disproportionately impacted by student debt. And then we'll get into the role of student servicers, what a servicer is, their role in exacerbating debt. I'll also share a short video of a borrower within North Carolina who talks about her impacts or the impact of student debt and the role the servicer has played in that. And then I have a slide that talks about our solution here in North Carolina and what we're proposing the North Carolina legislators to adopt. And then we'll have a slide with just resources, which are for follow-up for folks to kind of plug into the work. And then I'll share our social media handles, and then I'll close us out for today. So let's jump into it. So this is kind of an overview of what it looks like on the national landscape for our student debt crisis. So you have over 45 million borrowers that currently have student debt. And with this number, you can almost assume that everyone in this country either knows, has a family member, that has touched student debt in some way. And this relates to about $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. So a massive debt load for our country. And you have about 58% of adults between the age of 18 to 29 that have reported having student loan debt. So these are folks that are just getting their careers and their lives started, and they're already indebted. And this was the average amount of debt that folks held after recently graduating. Now, transitioning over to the North Carolina debt crisis, you have about 1.3 million borrowers in North Carolina, which is pretty extensive. And that relates to around $49.2 billion in student loan debt. And the average per borrower is actually over the federal average by $700. And so it's a problem here and around our country. So when we look at disproportionate impact to borrowers and demographic information, as we know in this country with the historical kind of understanding that Black and brown communities are starting out with less wealth. So when you see numbers like 20% of borrowers who live in communities of color have student debt and collections compared to 14% of white borrowers, this makes sense. It represents kind of what our country looks like and what it has always looked like, which is Black and brown folks not having as much wealth as our white counterparts. And so looking at some of the more demographic information, which is actually relevant to folks in this room, is looking at 25% of rural borrowers have reported being able or not being able to afford basic necessities like food or clothing. So you're having borrowers making tough decisions on whether I, buy food for my family or clothes for their backs, or do I pay my student loans, which have massive impacts as well to our credit reports, which could snowball into us not qualifying for mortgage loans, starting small businesses. So many different things that are impacted by folks not paying their student loan debt. So they're choosing, to pay that debt over basic necessities. Nope. And as you can see here, we already know in this country women face a wealth gap in the workplace. And so understanding that they're also indebted more than any other demographic in this country, it's a poignant kind of realization of what this actually looks like. So now we'll move into a student loan servicer. Now, I will start by saying that the U.S. contracts our federal student loan servicers. And from its preamble, I think it has been a broken relationship. So borrowers don't get to choose their student loan servicer. So they don't get to go through the process of researching what servicer has had good standing over the past few years, what servicers have participated in really abusive practices. Their servicer is chosen for them. And so they're basically hired to collect payments from student loan borrowers, respond to borrower questions about their accounts, and they work with borrowers on repayment options. Now, I will say that many of the abuses by loan servicers lie within the responding to borrower questions about their accounts and working with borrowers on their repayment options. What we see often is that borrowers are actually put into repayment plans that are more expensive instead of inexpensive plans like income-based repayment plans. And so as I was just mentioning, these are some of the common loan servicing abuses. So what we hear from borrowers, what our consumer finance agencies are hearing, you have servicers that are misapplying payments. And this can result in a borrower's account becoming delinquent. And if the borrower's account becomes delinquent, it's reported to the credit bureau. And I just finished talking about all the different snowball effects of what this could look like. And as I just mentioned, failure to put borrowers in income-driven repayment plans for which they qualify. So when you have servicers who are looking to profit off of borrowers, their scheme is to push borrowers into more expensive plans like deferment or forbearance, which all sounds good to a borrower when, let's say if I just lost my job and I call my servicer, which I've been making on-time payments for the past year, and I call them and I tell them I've experienced this financial shock, I can no longer afford my payments. So instead of the servicer putting them in an income-based repayment plan in which their payments will be at zero because they don't have any income, and it doesn't add on interest onto their loans for a year. So when you push them into deferment or forbearance, it sounds great. You get to forego your loans for a year, but what's not communicated is that the borrower will accrue interest for that entire year. And so more expensive plans, but it's how the servicers are able to profit off of the backs of borrowers. And these are some of the consequences. And you know what student loan debt kind of hinders the ability of borrowers in looking broadly, but specifically in our state. You have people who don't have the ability to purchase home because of their income to debt ratio. You have people don't have the ability to start families and start or expand small businesses. And as we all know, all of these issues are exacerbated for communities of color. Now, this is actually my favorite slide because for me, I think this paints the picture of how servicers think about the role of servicers with borrowers. So this is a quote by Navient, and I will say Navient is no longer a student loan servicer, which is great, but the practices still remain the same with servicers. But this was a quote by Navient CEO. There is no expectation that the servicer will act in the interest of the consumer. And Navient was actually sued by 39 state generals around our country for their deceptive practices. So they steered over 350,000 borrowers into more expensive plans, like I was just mentioning, forbearance and deferment. And I'd say this isn't unique to Navient. I personally had loans with the Fed loan servicer, and they were engaged in the same practices. I was in deferment and forbearance for years, not knowing that I could have benefited from an income-driven repayment plan. And so you find that this is representative of how servicers engage with borrowers. Now I do want to show you all, now this was working earlier, so hopefully it works now. But this is a borrower story about how student debt has impacted her and the role of servicers.
It's Angelica Mitchell's last class of the day.
We do not have homework this week, but you do have the opportunity to do makeup work.
Her student's day might be over, but hers is only half done.
This is the room that I stay in. I basically thrifted this and refurbished it.
How does someone with 4 college degrees, including a law degree, end up renting from a friend and working 2 jobs? Student loan debt. She had scholarships and part-time jobs in college. They weren't enough.
In total, I had $240,000 worth of debt, but I finished that program about 2 or 3 years ago, so interest has been accruing that entire time, and that's how we got to the $300,000 number.
All that debt means bad credit, which makes it hard to get a job in the legal field or find good housing. Angelica and North Carolinians like her owe a combined total of $48 billion.
Finding the lenders and then each of the different amounts, it's like, yikes. Like, I really took out all this. And honestly, when I was in school, What was I spending it on? I was using it for my rent and my utilities.
While Angelica works a second job doing online deliveries, lawmakers are looking for ways to get her some relief. Bipartisan legislation would require the state bank commissioner to license and regulate student loan service providers. Among other things, lenders could not omit or misrepresent any information related to the nature or terms of your loan. They would have to reduce late fees and negative credit reporting based on partial payments. And they would have to evaluate borrowers for income-based payment plans. None of Mitchell's lenders have done this.
We do need to have to monitor our providers and make sure that we're lending responsibly, because we wouldn't give this amount of money to an 18-year-old for a house.
Mitchell thinks future borrowers would benefit the most, but it's a ray of hope for current borrowers like her. Perhaps she won't need to do deliveries much longer.
It's crazy to even think about, because I've never even really thought about it. Like, this is so much a part of my life now that I really don't even consider that it could be better, could get better.
In Durham, Garrett Burnquist, Spectrum News 1.
Wow.
But yes, as you can see, these stories are important to tell because I think it gives a glimpse of what this actually looks like for the individual borrower. I think too many times we look at the numbers and we see the debt and we're like, yeah, it's massive, but what does it look like on the everyday for a borrower? I think is super impactful. So this is our North Carolina solution, and they talked about it briefly in the recent video that I was just showing. Now this is a North Carolina specific bill. So this is something our North Carolina legislators can adopt to protect borrowers within our state. And so what this bill does, and these are the kind of the three highlights of the bill. So one, it licenses and regulates student loan servicers. And what this means is that on an annual basis, they'll have to open up their books to the Commissioner of Banks and have their actions throughout the year reviewed. And so in addition, or kind of adjacent to that, is the position of the ombudsman to be created. And so this particular position will collect complaints from borrowers. And this will kind of help kind of inform the Commissioner of Banks' review of what to actually look for when they're doing their annual reviews. And another thing this bill does, so right now, it's kind of the wild, wild west in North Carolina as it relates to servicing. And servicers can pretty much do what they want, and borrowers have no recourse because there is no law right now that governs them. And so this allows for borrowers to actually sue their servicer if they're engaging in behaviors that are abusive and that have exacerbated their debt load. And so this is just a slide, which I'll send these slides after our time together today. But these are just places to turn when there's a need for assistance as it relates to student debt. So we have online counseling, more resources on understanding what cancellation is, how to consolidate your loans, and where to file a complaint in North Carolina in addition with the ombudsman, and so with our Attorney General, and just some different kind of resources on best practices for financing secondary schooling. And these are our social media handles. So we share a lot of policy kind of action alerts on our social media. We share a lot of research that is produced by the Center for Responsible Lending. And yeah, just feel free to follow us. And like I said, I'll share this out following our time together. But that is it for me. Feel free at any point if you are connected with borrowers, because one thing that I love to do is highlight the stories of folks who have been impacted. So if you're connected with anyone who has any stories about how servicers have played a role or lack thereof in exacerbating their debt, we'd love to hear from you. But that is it from me. I'll pass it over to Elizabeth to talk about how we try to avoid these problems in the future.
Who did you say was from Reidsville High School?
Me.
You.
Yes.
I think that Carolina College Advising Corps is one of the best things that they have ever done
Thank you.
in the high schools.
Thank you.
Have you seen a reduction as far as, I don't know whether you would know that, in students that apply for loans to go to school? I know you all help with applications and scholarships and all of that. Do
Absolutely.
you have a lot of students that come and seek help from you? Because I know my daughter, she went to Greensboro College, which is a private college, and she was lucky to get a lot of scholarships to help with her debt.
Absolutely.
And really didn't have to pay a whole lot of it back, but it was still over $10,000 that she had to pay back. And she teaches school, so, you know, that salary's not that great when you first start out teaching, but I was just wondering if you
Seen a trend.
seen a trend with that.
Absolutely. So this is my second year here at Reidsville High School. Happy to be there. I do see a lot more parent engagement and student engagement in those options, especially when they have somebody there like me to go over their financial aid awards and compare them across to see which one has the biggest price out of the gate or who's offering the most loans. So I do see students and families engaging in that process a lot more. Now, whether they take them a lot more or not, that's just a case-by-case basis, but I definitely do see students and parents taking advantage of the resources that are there to be well informed.
That's great, because when she graduated, it was in 2008 from high school, they really weren't in the school system then. So she actually went to the community college and she got 2 degrees from the community college and then went to Greensboro College after that. So her debt was not as bad as it could have been.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But yes, they are definitely taking advantage of the resources that are there, which I'm happy about. But yes, hello everyone. My name is Elizabeth Wood, and I am the current college advisor at Reidsville High School, and I serve with the Carolina College Advising Corps. So just an overview of the presentation that I'm going to give today. Hopefully it'll be more bright side, you know, more of the education behind financial aid and what that looks like for students. I typically give this presentation to our students and our families so they can make informed decisions about their post-secondary plans. So I'm just going to introduce who we are as the Carolina College Advising Corps, what is financial aid and what does that look like at the college level, when, so sort of the timeline for financial aid and scholarships, where you can find these financial aid opportunities, and why it's important to engage in the financial aid process. So just to highlight the Carolina College Advising Corps, so this is our mission. So the Carolina College Advising Corps helps low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented students find their way to colleges that will serve them well. And by providing well-trained, enthusiastic advisors who are close in circumstance to the students they serve, the program aims to increase college-going rates at partner high schools in North Carolina. So luckily for Rockingham County, there is a college advisor available for every high school in the county. So every school has a resource there. And we are spread out across North Carolina to other counties that we serve. So looking at financial aid, sometimes it can be a mystery for people. They're just like, they might be scared and they don't want to engage in the financial aid process. But I think it's really important for people to know what it is, what it can look like, so they can actually think about their post-secondary plans and what that will look like for them. So financial aid is any money that assists with paying for college and or career programs. So financial aid can come in a multitude of different ways. So it can come in the form of grants and scholarships, which you don't need to pay back. That is free money awarded by the federal government, the state, and the institution itself. Work study, which are part-time jobs that are funded by the federal government to help pay for school. And also self-help loans, what we talked about. So from the federal government, there can be subsidized and unsubsidized loans, and the difference between those are the timing of the interest accrual, which we'll get into that a little bit more. And there are also a fourth option that I put down there is apprenticeship opportunities that are available in Rockingham County that many students are lucky to take advantage of. So a lot of people are like, loans aren't considered financial aid. How is that helping me? I'm taking on debt. They are considered financial aid. So when considering loans, it's important to know which options and what they mean. So considering there are federal loans, so when students fill out the FAFSA, they have access to those federal loans. Those have typically a lower interest rate than private loans that you would seek out, which those are around 9% on the lower end. Some of those go higher. Also, the difference between those subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So for the subsidized loans, those are deferred interest plans. So they do not accrue interest while you are actively enrolled. But as soon as you are not actively enrolled, the interest starts. And then for unsubsidized, it starts immediately as the loan is dispersed to the school. That's when it starts accruing interest. And then there's also Parent Plus loans, which those are parent loans. They take those on. Sometimes parents think that, well, when they graduate, can I just transfer the loans to them? No, it is solely on the parent to pay back those loans if those are taken out. And that is a whole process that includes a credit check and see if you're eligible for those. And it's also important to consider which loans are eligible for federal and state loan forgiveness programs when you're taking out these types of loans. So for private loans, under certain circumstances, they're not going to be forgiven under federal and state loan forgiveness programs. So when considering and looking at those, which ones are available to you, if you have to take a loan, federal will be the better option just because they do qualify for a lot more forgiveness programs. Also, something to consider is how much it actually costs to attend the college or university or trade program to avoid over borrowing. So a lot of colleges will put that sticker price out there. I can know off the top of my head, the sticker price for UNC Chapel Hill is $25,000 a year. That includes a multitude of things. So that includes tuition and fees, room and board, but also things like transportation and books. But that is not what you're going to be billed exactly. So knowing the difference between the cost of attendance and what you will be billed, which will only be tuition and fees and room and board, those are only 4 things you're going to be billed for, is very important so you don't feel like you have to take out the entire $25,000 in loans if that doesn't necessarily apply to your situation. So those are some things to consider when borrowing loans, especially for students, and especially if parents are going to get those Parent Plus loans.
And that's if you live on campus.
Yes. And that's if you live on campus, you get billed for those housing and meal plans and different things like that. So looking on the bright side, finding more financial aid opportunities outside of loans, there are so many different opportunities available to students, and especially students in Rockingham County. They have advantage over certain things. So for finding those opportunities, the very first step is for students to complete the FAFSA, or the free application for student aid. This is a free resource that is sent to the colleges and universities that they apply to or are accepted to, and they use that to determine whether you are eligible for need-based grants and scholarships, that free money that you do not have to pay back. Also, maintaining good grades helps you. So for some of those institutional scholarships that you can get directly from the college, they are looking at your grades, they're looking at what you participated in, so they can offer you scholarships based off of those types of things. And also, like we talked, considering community college transfer pathways can definitely lower the price of going and attending college. Also, using scholarship search engines. I tell my students every day, have you looked on College Board? Have you looked on CFNC, the College Foundation of North Carolina? Those are my favorite search engines just because they are very specific to North Carolina, and it's a resource that they've used since 8th grade that they know they have access to find those different scholarships and things that they are eligible for. And if students are interested in trade programs, they can consider several options that we have here in Rockingham County, including Rocket Top, which is an apprenticeship program in manual machining, robotics, different things like that, where they pay you to go to school, be in the classroom, and to train on the job. It's a completely free program. If you get in, you're getting a paycheck the whole way through. So that is one way to finance your post-secondary options. Also, a new program called Rocket Top Teach. If you're interested in being a teacher assistant, it's the same type of process. They're training you to learn in the classroom, they're training you on the job, and at the end, you will have a certificate, no debt, college degree. Also, connecting with local resources, so NC Works programs. If students are eligible for these services, they will help with funding the places that you want to go or the programs that you want to do. It could be at the community college level, and they've expanded to the undergraduate level as well. So using the resources that are in the community are very important. And there are a lot of trade programs that will pay you to train and work outside of the ones that are offered in this county. So again, from people who are interested in trades, there are people there who are going to pay you to learn the skill and to be there. But I say the key to all of this is when opportunity knocks, it's up to the student to answer. So it's important for the students to start early and stay persistent, because a lot of scholarships don't just fall in their lap. You have to put the effort in. And we are definitely here as resources. They have counselors in their schools who we are posting scholarships every day. We are letting them know these scholarship opportunities are available. You're eligible for this one, this one, this one, apply. But the student has to be engaged in this process in order to make the best of it and get the most funding possible. An example, so this is our scholarship board at Reidsville High School. So I had to put some kid jargon in there, secure the bag this spring, just so it could be a little bit more attractive to the students. But this is a rotating board, and I put up available scholarships, a little blurb about what it is. Apply to this if you're eligible based off of these circumstances, and go ahead, take it out, bring it to me. We will sit down and we will work on it. So the opportunities are here. I even have a running document with I don't even know how many thousands of dollars of scholarships that's open to the students to take advantage of. In Rockingham County, I say locally, I wish I was in Rockingham County growing up, because a lot of the resources and the people that are willing to fund education in Rockingham County is amazing. And they are offering scholarships left and right. Like I tell you, I get one locally every single day. They're just like, here's this scholarship, here's this scholarship. But again, it's up for the student and the families to engage in this process so they can get to where they want to go for their post-secondary education.
It's amazing the number of scholarships they have at the community college level.
Absolutely.
From endowments and unbelievable pages and pages of scholarships. Because I know I've had 3 girls that went through the community college and they applied for them and got some of them. And it's a big deal.
Absolutely. So taking advantage of those resources that are there at the schools while they're in high school, and even after, just keep applying to those different scholarship opportunities is really important. Another thing I wanted to highlight is the timeline for financial aid. So students can take advantage of financial aid opportunities all year long, but there are a few key dates to keep in mind. So every year, the FAFSA opens October 1st. That is for the next school year. So starting October 1st, that is the key date to go ahead and get that FAFSA done, especially for our students who like to drag their feet a little bit. I still have kids, tomorrow's March 1st, and I had kids rushing to me this morning. But definitely the FAFSA is that very first application to open up a host of opportunities. Especially for some scholarships, you're required to fill out the FAFSA. So just going ahead and getting that done opens up a lot of opportunities. As I'll highlight here, March 1st, so tomorrow, most colleges and universities have a priority filing deadline of March 1st for maximum support for financial aid. After that, the students can still receive financial aid, but it will not be as much as if they filled it out before March 1st. They will still receive it. And then the absolute last day to submit the FAFSA, the free application for student aid, is June 30th for the next year. After that, it's kind of you're on your own, got to kind of figure it out. So if you can get it in by June 30th for the next year, that is optimal. And so lastly, why is it important to engage in the financial aid process, especially if your student is considering some sort of post-secondary education, credential, anything like that? It's important because it takes the guesswork out of what you may be eligible for. So a lot of people may think, oh, I heard such and such, they didn't get any money, and we might be on the same tax bracket, so I'm not going to get anything. Well, that's not necessarily true. Everyone's circumstance is different, and it's free to actually know. So taking advantage of that FAFSA, the free application for student aid, and actually figuring out what you may be eligible for is really important. Because a lot of people don't know that they may be eligible for the full Pell Grant, which if you start at community college, that covers a lot of your expenses. Or if you go somewhere else, that covers a bulk of your expenses. So just actually taking the guesswork out of it is important. Also, applying opens the door to more financial support. Like I said, some scholarship applications require you to fill out the FAFSA. Some programs require you to fill out the FAFSA. So that just opens up another door to have more financial support. And by earning a credential past high school, you are increasing your lifetime earnings overall past high school. So that is it for my presentation. Thank you so much. This is my contact. This is my school email. a phone number to the school, and also my Instagram, collegebound_Rams, where we have updates on what the students are doing, what they're engaging in. And also for our local advisors, I posted their information as well. So if your student is at a high school that our school serves, we serve all of them, you can surely reach out to the local college advisors. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have been trying to get in touch with you, but I didn't know who you were. So I am the HR manager at Henniges Automotive, and we want to have a job shadow day, hopefully in April, for junior and senior students. And the focuses of HR, robotics, maintenance, engineering, safety, manufacturing. I mean, to be honest, every student just like, I am just trying to get through high school. I'm undecided. I don't know if I even want to go to community college, let alone a 4-year university or in the military. So maybe I need to take that year off. Or I know directly I want to go into the workforce. And we're local. We're right here in Reidsville. And I have been calling the school, but they just didn't know who to put me through. So this is not a coinky dance. I am so glad. I mean, not only because I'm the HR manager, but I am an advocate of education. For me, my story, it was delayed but not denied. I never thought that my child would watch me get my undergrad and my master's, but that's just how it worked out. And so it's important that we highlight this. So many are afraid of the financial impact, and it's spoken so negatively. Oh boy, my student loans is almost like a mortgage. So some people feel like, well, why am I even going to try to go to college with, even before I get started in my career, I'm gonna have all of this debt over my head. Well, I feel like personally, I am no smarter than I was before I got my bachelor's and master's, but yet there was so much things that I learned along the way, the journey. And those 2 pieces of paper are something that no one can take away from me. I almost feel like the federal government owns me.
Right?
But it's so important. So I am so glad that I actually came in person and not even remote.
Absolutely.
It's just like that video with the girl has a law degree. I mean,
Yeah.
and just because she's deferred in her
Yes.
student loan, I don't agree with that.
I know.
It's just not fair.
It's not. Well, you had stated in there about planning families and different things. I worked at a local dealership, and people couldn't even buy a car because of these reasons without help from a family member or a friend. And that, we've seen a lot of that. So, I mean, it affects your whole life.
And when you think about like the credit reports, when she talked about the Parent Plus loans, like I remember from my personal experience, my mom didn't have like a great credit score. And so when you think about like, choosing on like whether to go with federal or private loans, like I didn't have a choice to go. I had to go get private loans because my mother couldn't, afford to take on more loans. And so, I think about that, about it as being this full picture problem because, college is too expensive. But how do you change it? How do you also pay for professors, pay for upkeep of the campus, all of the different resources? Like it's really rethinking secondary schooling and creating guardrails in place to keep folks from going haywire with student debt and, like getting a job, directly outside of graduating and then feeling like I'm never going to get from up under this debt. Because that was my initial feeling, when I'm graduating from undergraduate specifically with like $80,000 in debt and starting a job where I was doing organizing. So I was making $12 an hour. But it was really important work to me and wanted to do it and was passionate about it. But it wasn't enough. And I know for many folks, it's not enough.
My daughter wanted to go ahead and get her master's. And she should have, but she was at that point where she needed to go to work. And then she got her job, she got married, then she got pregnant.
Life
So,
happens.
Yeah.
Life, yeah.
and then she got pregnant again, and now she has 3 children. But she really needed to go ahead and get that master's when that opportunity was there before life took over.
Yeah.
Because she wants to be in administration in the school system, and she's got to have that master's degree to do that.
Remind her it's still doable. I'm the poster child. My son was 9 months old when I went to Averett to sign up for undergrad. I was a full-time employee at Goodyear, in management, a wife. I had credits everywhere and a degree nowhere because I, being 17 years old, was not mature enough, went to Norfolk State University, had a great time, but flunked out.
That sounds similar.
Well, my mother and father were paying for it. I flunked out, had to take that bitter pill, return back to Danville, and it was like, okay, DCC, I'm doing it, but I'm only limited to the 6 to 9 o'clock class, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. I'm like, this is going to take forever. And so my husband said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to sign up? And literally, I wrote to Averett, and I was like, give me some papers, hurry up, before I change my mind. And my son was 4 when I finished. I took 2 months off and got my master's. Now I still work full time. I only have 1 child, not 3. Sometimes my husband is the other child, but I wanted it so bad. Was it easy? No, but that's why I mean so much. And watch, she's gonna plant a seed for her kids.
Oh, yeah.
They notice that, and
She
don't
has.
don't look at the time frame. You know, when you go to school, everyone says, "When are you gonna finish?" Just know I'm gonna finish. You know, even if I have to take a pause for the cause, just know that I'm gonna finish. And on top of that debt hanging over your head, some, especially right out of high school students, I feel like they're like, 4 years is too long. But I equate the story of, because I like the Summer Olympics, and my favorite sport is track and field. I just love how they run, they train, and I mean, their physique, to me, it's amazing. And when you're an Olympian, you're like the best of the best in the entire world. And their job is to compete against themselves, other runners, the clock. They have a coach that's like their manager, and that's what they do for that one opportunity to even qualify into the Olympics. So for 4 years, they're working so hard. So that's your freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. Just like in the Olympics, every 4 years. For them to get to that finish line, my favorite runner, Usain Bolt, he can run his race in a matter of like 6.2 seconds. He turns around and look and still see like they're trying to catch up with him, right? And I thought about, I said, I worked my butt off. The world had to pass me by for those 4 years. For them to just call my name for like 2 seconds. It was so much of the same, but it was worth it. That hard work that athlete has to put in, I was the student. So it just makes sense. I didn't think about how much I was going to pay back. You will get it if I have it. And thank God that since I did get it, I've just gotten so many opportunities to expand in my career and even in my wallet. But if they can see what's at the end of the tunnel and not focus on that cloud of student loan. It's fear, and it's a hindrance, and it's a blocker. And it will really deter them from their dream. And it removes cement boots off of you to feel like, no offense, I work in a factory, but we have some floor employees, my husband being one of them at Goodyear, tire build 25 years. He's like, this is all I know. He feels stuck. Versus when you have those credentials, you feel like you have more opportunities made available. We want choices. We want options. But without it, you're limited. It's doable, but some things are just limited. And that's why it's important.
She's only 33, so she can still do it.
Absolutely.
She has an 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 3-year-old right now, but and her husband is in school, so she's trying to let him get finished with his, and then, cause she can do a lot of hers online.
You're talking about it being an inspiration,
Yes.
you said, to the children if you are a parent and you finish. The best graduation I ever attended, the family sitting in front of me was a husband and a 6-year-old boy. And his mama walked, and I'm gonna cry. I cried like a baby. His mama went across that stage and they called her name, and he stood up in his chair and was, "That's my mama." Like, he was so proud.
Yeah.
She has no idea the impact that put on that baby.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it may have took her a little extra time,
It's
right?
okay.
But she went across that finish
The
line.
race is not given to the swift, it's those that work the
That's
end.
right.
And my son sat with me a lot in the libraries, at the
Yes.
kitchen table, at the dining room.
And
Sleep is
they're
overrated.
They have a lot of determination. They're learning. They're absorbing that.
It's a seed point.
It is, absolutely.
I'm a big supporter of Rockingham Education Foundation, and I know you all get funded through that, and I always try to contribute to their fundraising, and I always want my donation to go toward the the NC College Advising Program, because I just think it's very worthy.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Thank
great
you.
to have y'all in the schools.
Thank you. We're happy to be here and to share that education with students, just to alleviate that fear, because I feel like fear comes from the unknown as well. So definitely being a resource for the education, and students know that there are options that are best suited for you and will get you to the goals that you want to have for your life is very important to us.
So many scholarships. I remember when my middle daughter, the one that I was talking about, when she graduated, we went to the awards day. There were scholarships from Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Mhm.
One girl got $20-some thousand from Coca-Cola. And she just kept applying. She applied for everything she could find.
I mean,
And you
and
got so
that's
much.
work. So that's why sometimes you're like, I don't even want to write it. I live in Danville, Virginia, big tobacco, area. There are so many tobacco scholarships that part of the scholarship awards is if you agree to stay and work in the area like for so much time, after you finish, but some just don't want to do the work. Now, opportunity is just not going to come knock, but if you write a really good scholarship essay, just change.
Exactly.
Oh, that's,
Copy and paste.
If
Copy
it's
and
not
paste.
broke, don't fix it.
Absolutely.
Don't fix it. But there has to be work on their part, but the reward is so sweet.
It absolutely is.
We have about 10 minutes if there's any lasting questions. But I'd just like to say, I absolutely love your work. Because for one, I still think back, even all that I've accomplished throughout secondary schooling, post-secondary schooling, I would still not go back to college. I just would not. And I always tell my wife this, I was one of, like your husband, I wanted to actually find something I was really good at and do it forever. That was my trajectory. I didn't apply for scholarships, grants, loans or anything, in 11th or kind of towards the end of 12th grade. But this was my plan. I was planning to just go into the workforce with no understanding of what work I wanted to do, what skill set I had. And I just remember my mom, and from her life experiences, she's like, you're not going to just work. You're going to go off to college. And I just remember resenting, my mom for the first year of me being in college. And my resentment kind of played itself out with me just not wanting to go to class. I'm just going to party. And so I was one like you, I failed out. So my first semester, I had maybe a little over a 1.5 GPA. Second semester, I had gotten mono. And so they didn't tell me I could do a medical leave. So I had missed 2 months of schooling. And they were like, yeah, you're going to go home. Yeah. And so, and I was like, fine, this is where I wanted to be anyway. So So I was excited. And then I remember going home, working at Starbucks. And I just remember and saw myself filling up folks' cups for the rest of my life. And so, you know, for me, I was just like, let me go back and let's finish. With no scholarships, no anything. I'm just like, let's go finish. And so, I mean, everything worked out well. Like I went back to school. I graduated with like a 3.5 GPA with like honors in political science. Graduated, went and did some organizing, found my love for policy, decided to apply to Duke, which I thought was like crazy. But my organizer that I was working up under was like, you know, why not? And so I applied, and got in, and it changed my life. But I still would say, because I had gotten myself into so much debt without like resources that, you know, from guidance counselors or any options. And so like I still, in my mind, I'm like, I would still go back to a trade. And so that's why, because I know that there's other kids out there that are like me. But there's also other kids like my wife who's been planning for college since she's been in 8th grade. And so, which it boded well. She went to Davidson, didn't have to pay $1. But for me, my experiences were different. So I appreciate the work that you all do to provide options for students. Well, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Elizabeth, for your information.